All right, everyone, thank you for coming out tonight for Women in Linux and Understanding Linux, but we do so much more than understanding Linux. Tonight, I kind of want to review some stuff. Again, like I say, this is not a loosely, this is not a tight uh, talk tonight. It's more on, hey, my audio is being degraded. Can you all still hear me? Okay, there it is. We're going to talk about job searching, interview processes, asking the right questions. What questions should you ask a recruiter? What questions should you ask when you're in the interview? And I want you all to chime in as well too if you have questions as well. So, but first thing is first. The common things that I see in terms of job requests are what you see on here. All right, so everyone can see this job description, correct? All right, so this came over today again 6:11 p.m. So pretty fresh. So as you can see, they want someone that can do be a senior consultant for 3 months, possible extension. Most of the time, there's always an extension. So never look at a role and be like, "Oh my God, it's just 3 months, and I had to pack my life up to move to a location." So and I'll even talk about that too. All right. So first things first. The job role says Red Hat Identity Manager, IDM, and Active Directory, such that users maintain a consistent user profile across client information systems. So the first question, if you've never seen a description like this before, the first question is, what is Identity Manager? Well, it kind of sounds like what it says, but at the same token, you have to ask yourself is what where can I find this information at, right? The next one it says implementing rail workstation provisioning access to satellite server 6, both for rail 6 systems and rail 7 systems, and then implementing workstation security controls, uh, GNOME and KDE desktops. So I'm going to break down exactly what all that means in a nutshell. And then I'll go into further things like what you should know in terms of trying to get a job in this capacity. All right, so first thing is first, Red Hat Identity Manager. So let's go here. What they're talking about are these things: free IPA, and then Red Hat Identity Manager is Red Hat has their own right here, and as you can see, I've been through here before. And then let's get back to this description. Oh, not that one. You see, I got a ton of them to go through. Hold on. Where'd you go? Ah, I remember it off the top of my head. Identity Manager is one, and then Red Hat Satellite 6 and 7, and then so forth. Okay, so Identity Manager is really the open source version is free IPA, right? And what this allows you to do, it allows you to have a way to do authentication on the Linux side using Kerbals. So originally we used to use NIS, and NIS was unsecure and was able to be hacked, and people moved away from that particular protocol and moved over to well, I shouldn't say protocol, but moved away from NIS over to free IPA to use the Kerbals protocol, which gives you better um, gives you better, I guess, security standards in terms of your hashes and so forth. So what you can do with FreeIPA is you can set up auto mounts. So basically, when I log in as a user, my my directory, my home directory is actually auto mounted from NFS. And if you don't know what NFS is, let me know. I can go into that after this. So what it does do, it allows me better authentication, it allows me centralized authentication. NIST allowed it, but there's other things that NIST couldn't do that Kerberos can. We can also tie Kerberos back into, or FreeIPA back into AD. So on that job description where they were talking about tying back into AD, that's what it is, because underneath all of Windows is Kerberos, and you can actually make your Windows Active Directory or domain controller uh, actually talk to your Linux boxes as far as authentication, what groups and so forth they can have, and break it down from there. So you always want to have one centralized location for authentication, and that's where that comes in at. And so that's what Identity Manager is. So now the question is, well, how do I get access to using these products? Well, if you don't have a Red Hat license or you don't want to pay for one, you can download CentOS. And so with CentOS, they go kind of in line, not kind of, but in line with what Red Hat puts out. So Red Hat puts out a release. I think their release cycle is every 6 months, and then CentOS is right along with Red Hat. What you don't get with CentOS is you don't get support. There are third party companies out there that actually provide you support for CentOS, but I only found like maybe it's probably about 10 of them out there that I've seen. All right. The other thing that was on there that we saw was Red Hat Satellite. All right. So Red Hat Satellite you used to pay for it, but now I think it's free, and now you only pay for the actual number of clients that actually authenticate, not authenticate, but are actually used on this particular server. So, for example, I can set up Red Hat Satellite, but the moment I get a client to join the satellite server, then that's when I have to start paying for it. Now, when I say join the satellite server, I'm saying it is a way, satellite server is used in the capacity of having a way to say, okay, you desktop over there, you join the satellite server, and now I can manage and check to see when you're out of security compliance in terms of updates for your packages. I can check to see how much memory you have on your machine. I can get diagnostic information about you. Um, and I can also get information about what packages you are out of sync with from my perspective for security, and what packages are on your machine. I can get IP address information and the whole nine. So let's look and see if we can find a screenshot of Red Hat Satellite Server, and then we can go from there. Let me see. So this is the old one. This is real. This is 5. We want a version of what 6 looks like. And so this is 6. Let's go visit this user guide here. And Red Hat Satellite is on 6.3. 6.1 is old. I think they're gonna. I think they're stopping support on that. Let me see if we can find a image. Lifecycle management, and that's the other thing you can get out of Red Hat Satellite is lifecycle management, where you say, "Hey, I have a testing environment. I have some new RPMs out, and I want to test them first." Well, I can set up like lifecycle management and say, "Okay, well, deploy these new RPMs to this desktop, and then let us test." And if these RPMs don't, if the test fails and so forth, I can roll back to what it used to be. So I have a rollback feature. You can do that with Yum Yum History Undo, or you can just go through the actual satellite server. And I'm looking for an image, but I don't see one. Okay. All right. So this is kind of blurry. So as you can see in here, where it starts talking about compliance, and it starts talking about making sure that your servers are up to date. We can do that all in in Red Hat Satellite. So, with that being said, Red Hat Satellite is like your single glass of pane where I can deploy my servers, I can deploy workstations, I can deploy desktops. I can also deploy to Amazon. I can deploy to Azure. I can deploy to Google Cloud. I can also deploy to OpenStack inside and OpenShift. So when I say deploy, meaning I have a template of what I want this desktop or this VM or this instance should look like inside of Amazon with these templated out configurations, and then I just deploy it, and now I have that set up. On the flip side of that, you have a free version of the satellite server. So um, there is Spacewalk, but I think Spacewalk stopped at Spacewalk stopped at 5, I think. I may be wrong. I'll go back. Do 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 do. Let me go to documentation. Yeah, see, yeah, satellite 5.8. That's where Spacewalk stopped at. So it's older. The other one that you can use, and I've talked about this before, is Catello and Foreman. And then I'm gonna go back to the satellite server after this because this part is important. This part is important because the Red Hat satellite server is built around these products, Catello and Foreman. So inside of this user guide, let me see if they got anything up here. I'm gonna do so see here the satellite provides the Catello service. And if you go back over here to Foreman, and you can see that Foreman is a part of the satellite server. And so they have a list of all the services for the satellite server. Let me look up satellite server, Red Hat Core. All right. So here is the breakdown of what we usually, how we look at the satellite server. You see, you have the satellite server and then you have capsules. Well, capsules are meant to alleviate uh, traffic and updates going all the being pounded on one satellite server on one server. So I could have a capsule out in uh, Florida, I can have a capsule in DC, I can have a capsule in New York, and then they all have their own profile and they have their own boxes that check into it. So you can see you got different regions, and so you can see here they also talked about KVM. They also talk about Rev. They talk about bare metal and Docker. All those things can be managed from the satellite server, and then let's see if they break down um, the different components, system components. Okay, here they go. So we got Foreman, we have Catello, we got Candlepin, Hammer, and then the REST API. And I'll send you this over. You could change this from 6.2 to 6.3 if you wanted to, because that's the latest and greatest. 6.2 is behind the release for the satellite server. So in here, they talk about what each component does. What does Foreman do? What does Scatella do? What does Candlepin do? What does Pulp do? Hammer being able to go from command line and uh, do configuration from command line versus going into the GUI and configuring things. And then over here with Foreman and Catello, it gives you a way to do the same thing for free over on this side for setting up an infrastructure inside your infrastructure, setting up a satellite server inside your infrastructure. Now, with that being said, of course, anything you pay for should be easy for you to deploy. Anything you don't pay for is probably going to be a little cumbersome in order for you to deploy. So, with that being said, do expect some lead time on trying to figure out how to deploy Catello and Foreman and how to get everything authenticated and setting up your repos and setting up this and your manifest and the whole nine in order to use Catello and Foreman versus where Red Hat took away all the complexity of just doing the install and said, here, run this script, and then you're on your way, and read through our documentation in order to do what you need to do. There's documentation, of course, for Catello and Foreman, but it can be a little convoluted when you start trying to just first figure these things out. The other thing you saw on there was GNOME and KDE, which are the desktops for uh, the desktops and the interfaces for a workstation. So GNOME desktop. So basically, if you got a workstation sitting at your desk and you have a particular interface that you like to use, a lot of people like KDE. Some people just like it stock, straight GNOME from there. But this is what you usually get if you do a Linux workstation install or a desktop install. You're gonna get this type of GUI, and then you install packages just like you do with Windows in order to say, hey, I want to have Python on there, or I would like to have Anaconda, or I would like to have Go, or whatever. It's the same thing. Like on your Mac, you do a brew install. On your Linux box, following the Red Hat Fedora model, DNF and Yum. If you're on Ubuntu, is apt-get. If you're on Gentoo, I believe Gentoo is apt-get as well too. So those are the models that it follow. So why did I tell you all this? Because that's exactly what that job description is. The job description is, do you know how to deploy satellite server? Do you know how to deploy and set up IDM? And then you know how to manage the workstations that have to authenticate to these things? Do you understand how to set this up and back it up? Do you understand how to get my desktops to authenticate? Can my desktops authenticate to AD? Can you get this to integrate and authenticate to AD? So there's a lot of moving pieces, right? The next complexity that comes in is, how do you automate these things? So this is where your Ansible, this is where your Puppet comes into play. This is when you start learning those things so that you can automate your install of these things. Because really what you want to do is you want to be able to tear down your entire infrastructure and to redeploy your infrastructure automatically. So your GitLab, your GitHub comes into play with that, your Travis CI, all of that comes into play on how to set this up and then do an automated deployment. Your workstations, your desktops, when you do a deployment, you should be doing from the satellite server. You're going to do a kickstart server. You're going to set up a kickstart server on your Red Hat satellite server, and you're going to do provisioning based on, hey, I have a desktop with, and the way it works is doing it off the network. Hey, I'm gonna put my desktop on the network. I'm going to go into TFT boot and then say, hey, I want to uh, I want to run off of my network card and then receive a DHCP address from my satellite server, and then give me a working kickstart or some type of image that of how you want me to look. Remember, the computer is just gonna is dumb out of the box, and you have to make it smart. So that's what you're doing. So those are the things that I often see. It's Ansible, it's Puppet, it's Chef, it's Salt, it's Red Hat Satellite, it's IDM, and then it's maybe some high availability, but I don't see a lot of that. Let's go look at what else I am seeing here. Let's look at this. All right, so here they want someone that's a system engineer. They want someone that can script. So, scripting, what languages do you most commonly use? If you're working inside of mostly Linux, mostly Python, mostly Bash, and then maybe some Ruby and Go. Probably more Ruby than you would Bash. Those are the common languages. Go is pretty new, and not a lot of people have it installed by default. Like, there's not a standard package. So in here, this is an opportunity to work with a retailer ensuring critical holiday monitoring is in place, fast-paced autonomous work environment, task variety, engagement, and visibility across delivery and IT operations team. All right, so let's look at this. They say deliver operational and financial efficiencies using standardized HI and KPI. Oh, we're doing metrics here. Partner with IT delivery operations teams to design, develop, and implement and maintain availability and performance and metrics. So when I hear that and I look at that, I'm looking at lifecycle management. I'm looking at how do I design my network. I'm also looking at what do you already have in place. Is there a development team? Do they are they setting up automation as well too? Are they checking their code in the GitLab and automating their builds? I'm also looking at performance monitoring. That's when I hear I'm looking at logs and the ELK stack, and I'm looking at um, Zabbix or some type of monitoring tool. If they're not in the cloud and this is on premise, then I need to find that out too. But it doesn't look from reading this, it doesn't look like that. It says your typical day will be engaging, delivering, and supporting teams to deploy new monitors. They may also be involved in a metric collection. So again, this is all about performance. So when I hear this, the other thing that comes to mind is Linux performance. Sorry. Any questions? Because I have not been looking. If you have questions, please just yell out.
Mika, regarding the scripting language, you mentioned Python, Bash, Ruby, and then one that started with a G. I don't
Go,
recall which one that was.
go,
Oh,
go.
Go. Okay.
Yeah, go programming. All right, so Linux performance, and I spoke on this before. This guy is a good guy to go and check out his website. In fact, he's over the Lisa conference this year. So that's a good one. There's also a Linux performance guide from Red Hat, and I advise you to download it and look at it, read it, get familiar with it. It is an interview question. So one of the things that will come up in an interview is I have a process that's running. I have a machine that's running and it's running out of memory. What are you going to do to troubleshoot it? What are you going to look for? The machine keeps dying. We restart it, and then after a while, it keeps dying. How do you solve that problem? Another question would be is how do you stop a runaway process? How do you kill a zombie process? How do you monitor a process? How do you check for bad memory without rebooting the machine? Those are different things that come up on an interview anytime, anywhere. So it is very good to have something like this to understand how you look at system performance. Now, remember, this is just system performance. This isn't application performance. This is just how the system is operating. And I also sent you the stuff for Brandon Gregg. Check him out because that's going to be important as well too, for you to check him out and check out over what he said, and he's also on YouTube as well too. Another thing that comes to mind when I'm looking at this job description is also stating that the ability to work independent, solve problems, and ability to complete tasks. That sounds like you got a queue of tickets that you need to run through and complete tasks and document. Now, the first thing that people say, I just completed the task, and you're going to give an update, but you don't have details of the update. So the best thing for you to do, if you know that you got to go over something is take screenshots or write it down and then put that into the actual ticket itself. So that way, someone who comes behind you can maybe search the database for something similar or they had a similar problem, and then they can go back through and actually do the same thing that you've done without recreating the wheel. It just makes you better on your documentation and it makes you remember more. All right. So here, this is kind of like company specific. It looks like they're running all HP machines, so they probably have some type of contract with HP. So this HP Micro Focus Sight Scope. All right. So this is something that you probably won't be able to get, but let's go check it out. All right. HP Sight Scope. Okay, they had it in agentless applications performance monitoring software. Ta-da. All right, so they have a free trial, so you can download it. Let's come back. Let's go and scroll down here. Automated application performance, intuitive monitoring, quick time, cloud, okay, Docker and Kubernetes. So again, here we start talking about containers. So we could, if we're doing application, this could be a container situation where they're having containers on HP machines. Let's look at HP BSM. Let's see. And everything that you see me doing here is exactly how I break down a job description that gets sent to me. I actually literally go take time out to look at the products, what they're doing. I would sit down here. It looks like this is a look like BSM is old, so it's been out for a while. And I would sit down here and look at the 30-minute video on it. It's probably changed since then, but at least I have an overview of how it works. Having an overview of how it works is important. So let's look at this. Whenever it renders here. All right. So end-to-end monitoring. Okay. So this lets me know, and this is, of course, it's HP. We're talking about end-to-end monitoring on the applications, the users, the infrastructure. So they have monitoring of the actual servers themselves. So along with that, they have probably have a license. And the other question I would ask with this is how many servers do you have inside of your infrastructure that I'm going to need to monitor? And, do you have a timeline of like when applications break? Do you have some kind of background or history of data of when these applications may break down? Is this on a continuous life cycle? Like, are we rolling in new hardware every 3 years or every year? Those are questions I would want to know. I want to ask because each time a new model of the hardware comes out, meaning there's a new chip, meaning there's some new memory, meaning there's some new onboard features that may affect the application or it may not. Those are things that I would look to ask and do my research on. For Elasticsearch and Logstash and Kibana. Again, you can download a container for Elasticstack from Docker and just start playing with it so you can get an idea of how it works. Elasticsearch is used for a lot of it is used in machine learning, and a lot of it is used in big data, primarily for looking at logs and seeing what the performance and hits that we're getting, and an ability to index what's going on with our systems. That's where where Elasticstack comes in. So again, here, critical thinking, communication, meaning and adaptability, meaning we're moving, and you just need to be able to adapt once we make some changes and keep it pushing. So that's how I look at this and break it down. And it says that you need to have some Python uh, understanding, meaning you're probably going to be writing some scripts to pull out some information. So you're probably going to need things like this, awk and sed, in order to understand how to get information and then take that information and filter that information. And when you're using things like the ELK stack, you're going to filter on the ELK stack. So that's how I would look at that job request, and that's how I mentally would break that down. And then I would go do my research on that, on those products. I would look at the background on those products. I would take notes. So when I go talk to that recruiter, I have a good idea of what that environment is like, or at least move to the next round. And now I can start really drilling and asking the people about the environment. How many people are on your team? How long has this position been open? Why is this position open? What happened in over the last 6 months with your applications? Have you had any failures? What are you looking to correct? Those are the things that you have to keep in mind. Those are the things that you ask. Those are the things that you just keep pounding away until you get a visual view of what is going on in the environment, to the whether or not you want to know if you want to put yourself in that situation. Any questions? Okay. All right. So the next one I had was, let me see, we did that one. Let me go over here. All right. So now this one is a DevOps engineer. They was like, this is out of Mooresville, North Carolina. 9 times out of 10, North Carolina is one of two things. It is probably a bank or some kind of hedge fund or something of that nature. Those are usually what I get out of that area. So let's look at this. Um, they want to do DevOps. So if anyone can let me know what's the first thing that comes into mind when you hear DevOps, can you please write that in the text box, and just I'll just read it off. Just the first thing when you come to mind when you hear DevOps. Programming. What's the next thing? Anybody else? Combine some development with ops. Anybody else? All right. So I can tell you what's the first thing that comes to mind for me when I see DevOps. The first thing that comes to mind to me is a couple of things. Are they doing collaboration? Are they doing any type of life cycle management, CI, CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery? Um, um, is there a project manager involved? Uh, how are they making the approach to move into DevOps, or they're trying to uh, stop the silo situation, and they need someone to come into a situation and help them move forward in that. So that's what I come in, and those are things that I think about, like, are they, is it new for them or something they already done? And when I hear DevOps, I immediately think automation. I immediately think lifecycle management, and again, collaboration is a good one. And then programming. So programming, I kind of go along the lines of, uh, I kind of say automation, but there's a difference between programming and automation. But again, it's still infrastructure as code, is what I hear. So they say here they need 2 years of Puppet, okay, and then they need Terraform. Well, when I look at that, I see Terraform and Puppet. So what that tells me is they're using Terraform to deploy to Amazon, and the products that they're using are the VPC, DNS, Identity Manager, KMS, Lambda, RDS database, S3 buckets, and EC2 instances. And then they're using Linux, and again, they're using CI CD, and they have Jenkins and Nexus. So probably what ends up happening is they type their code up, infrastructure as code up in Terraform. They take it and then check it into GitLab or GitHub, and then Jenkins automatically goes out and does a build out on Amazon. And if it passes or fails, someone gets an email. So that takes care of Terraform, that takes care of CentOS, that takes care of CI/CD, and how does it take care of Linux because you choose an AMI that is either RHEL or CentOS. Where does Puppet come into play? Well, Puppet probably comes into play because they probably want to do some hardening, some security hardening, or they want to do something else. Let's go back and read this. Let's see. They say the client is currently looking for a senior level engineer to work at a high level cloud migration project. So there you go. They're migrating from on premise to the cloud. And how and why did they choose Terraform? Because the Terraform allows them to go in between different clouds. So if they ever decide that they don't want to use AWS anymore and they want to switch over to Google Cloud, it's not that big of a deal. The person will collaborate on the process improvement efforts and will utilize automation, cloud, e-commerce, website hosting to create new implementation designs for future technology parts. In other words, you're going to be looking ahead to see what's coming down the pipe and what improvements can we make. One, and then two, what's coming down the pipe, and let's design and engineer this better. So we may have an engineer deployment 1.0, and now we've seen some things that was kind of wacky and kind of wonky. Let's go for 2.0 and let's make that better. They're also looking for someone experienced in Terraform, Puppet, and cloud hosting to be a key member of their TAM. So technical, I guess, technical area management. So this could be a Red Hat job. All right, so let's look up AEM as or Hybris. Never heard of AEM or Hybris, but let's go look it up. Okay, AEM Hybris integration. Okay, Adobe, something from Adobe. Let's look it up. It says nice to have. But again, if you don't know anything about it, how would you get information? You go here, you look at it, you see if they got a trial, you try to install it. You go on YouTube and you look up stuff, or you look at their white paper that they may have. And don't ever deny yourself the look of reading through a white paper, even if it's as abstract as possible. You can probably get in touch with the person who wrote it and ask them, do they have time for like a 15-minute conversation because you just want to understand it and then get more information on how things work. Just another idea. All right, so Adobe Experience Manager and Hybris. Even though some considerations to take in count. Okay, staging. If you plan on making a POC on your project, all right, this looks like automation for Adobe or something. Let's go over here. Let's look up AEM Hybris. It's a connector. All right. An AEM Live e-commerce integration with Hybris. How to integrate Adobe Manager and SEP Hybris through an OOD. So it's a connector. So it's a connector to some application using e-commerce. That's what this looks like. So I would literally go through here and just sit down and look at it, especially like this right here, this SAP Hybris tutorial for beginners. Perfect. I'm on it. That's exactly what I would be looking at. So let's look and see what else they have on here. Elasticsearch, we just went over that. So again, you see Elasticsearch come up again. SQL, Perl, Python, Ruby, Java development. So nice to have, but not necessarily something you need to do. And they want a person with a bachelor's degree. So what I would do in this case, I will respond back to the person with these questions. Is it is it actually 9 months and a possible extension? How long has this project been around? Is it an ongoing project? Is it new? The next question I would ask is, what's the salary range they're looking for? Is it possible to be remote uh, on that? I see there's a W-2, but I will also ask, can I be 1099 with that as well? I will also ask how many people are on the team. Are they new, are they building a new team, or do they already have a team? And then another question I would ask too is, how big do they want to grow the team? Because you may walk into a situation where it's 30 people on the team, or it's 20 people on the team. So you may not want to be in a situation like that. So these are questions that I would just ask. Any other questions? Does this all make sense for everyone? Okay. All right. So this one here. All right. So they sent over looking for a system engineer with this experience. They want somebody with AWS and Azure. So when I hear AWS and Azure, you better believe I hear Terraform. Why? Because I can go in between the two. Shell scripting, Red Hat Satellite, and Open LDAP. There you go again. That Red Hat Satellite came back around again. And so did shell scripting. Again, probably Python, Ruby, or Bash. Go will probably be down on the list. All right. So here it's a F5. Okay. So now this sounds like a system engineer slash network person, maybe security, because they're looking for someone that has load traffic manager, access policy manager, and this is all under the F5, and those products are pretty expensive. And then TCL, which is a language, and then Node.js based. All right, so they're looking for somebody that has a little bit of experience on that. They're looking for somebody with some Windows and PowerPoint experience. So you kind of got to be like a Linux person, you got to be a cloud person, a network person, and then they're also looking for someone who has uh, down here network administration. So Cisco Nexus fiber channel. So they probably got some fiber channel switches, high intake there, IPsec. So this looks like a security Linux security network person is what I'm going with, and probably possibly do some integration into with Windows. Uh, that's what that looks like. I'm not sure what they're doing on SharePoint. It just says SharePoint. I don't know if you have to manage it or you just have to use it. But that's what I would get. So if I ask the person the question, I'm gonna ask them, yeah, see, and it's a DevOps lead. I'm gonna ask them what do they need the Windows person, what do they need for a Linux person to do on this part here? As far as the network administration, is that something you're if you're a DevOps lead, do you have somebody on your team that actually does this? Because this right here could be broken up into one, two, three, four different teams, and you're leading the team, and the team goes out and does those things, and you may not have to know the verifying detail, but you can look up the details if you had to. HBSS, host-based security, and STIGs, again, security, uh being able to talk and probably do some stuff in SharePoint. You probably won't have to deploy, but you most definitely would probably have to deploy to Azure and AWS and probably use Terraform, and then understand load balancers and who has access to what using F5 Big IP. So if you don't know what F5 Big IP is, this is what you do. You cut and paste, and let's come over here since I'm in YouTube. And then they have some stuff here with getting started with uh, F5 and Big IP. We'll run through those and look at them. If it's something that you don't understand, that's fine. That's okay. Because again, you don't have to know everything on this job description, but it would be nice for you to know at least three of the things on the job description and still apply. All right. And this one. All right. So here, Bethesda, Maryland, long term, a senior web administrator. Okay, so if I skip down here to the experience, I'll read the other stuff in a minute. All right, Red Hat Satellite, I mean Red Hat Enterprise, the LAMP stack, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, hardware load balance applications, security certificates, creating and applying, meaning SSL certificates, Drupal, experience with Drupal. You can download Drupal for free. I'll go over that in a minute. Installing and troubleshooting MySQL and Postgres. Detailed TCP/IP, understand the TCP/IP network. I mean not network, but stack and model. I'll go over that, and then excellent written communication documentation skills. All right, so let's go back up here to I said the LAMP stack and Drupal. All right. Drupal is first. And here, let's go Drupal. And then over here on Google, let's go Drupal. I hadn't used Drupal in a while, but here you go. Open source content management. So you can literally download this and start playing with it and go from there if you wanted to. Or you can download a container and play with it and then go from there. What you're gonna get out of Drupal is this. So if I do Drupal versus Confluence. All right. So one of the ongoing battles is, do I use Drupal or do I use Confluence? So basically a glorified uh a glorified wiki, if you want to call it that. Like being able to upload your documentation, share things with people, kind of creating your own documentation site for things that you've done. And people can follow behind you and look at it and say, okay, this is what you did the last time. Here's how to install Drupal. You throw it up in Confluence, or this is how you install Confluence and you throw it up in Drupal. So those are things that does. The LAMP stack, again, like I said, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. How would I do this? Well, hey, LAMP stack tutorials. And FYI, anybody that writes documentation for DigitalOcean, I think they're paying 250, up to 250 or up to 500 for documentation. So here they talk about how to install the LAMP stack. I would literally take one of these here. You can do Ubuntu or you can do Red Hat, and I would literally sit here and just read the documentation, just do the install, and then set it up and say, okay, I've gotten it up and running on a LAMP stack up and running. Now what am I supposed to do? What is this LAMP stack good for? Okay, so let's look up use cases for LAMP stack. All right, so let's see. All right, they talk about choosing the right stack. All right, this probably be a good one. And then I will walk through here. Like mean is Mongo. That's what it. Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node.js, and LAMP. Again, Linux, Apache. And then they talk about what each one does. What's the better use of this, and why? Why would you use this stack? So basically, you have something that's checking into a database. You have Apache as your web server, Linux as your OS, and you'll probably be writing some stuff in PHP or Perl or Python, like they said. But that's it for that. And let's go back to it. They're talking about configuring day-to-day system management tasks such as troubleshooting, backup management, and performance tuning. So you're probably backing up the websites and backing up the files themselves. Stability, performance monitoring, and security. Again, we're talking about the performance of the actual instance or bare metal machine. How does it act? Is it getting too many requests? That thing. Installation and maintenance plugins. So again, templates and custom software, things that a senior web developer would do. Performance tuning on and improvements. We talked about that earlier with the performance Linux guide from Red Hat. Monitor third-party services and applications. So you got to find a way to monitor those things. So there's probably some centralized thing like we saw before with HP that monitors. But in this case, they may be using some open source stuff. So finding out about the hardware and things that they have in place. Troubleshoot and resolve problems. Again, something spinning out of control, a runaway application or a runaway process. Document your procedures and train the staff. Again, it goes back to security again here and performance tuning. So again, it sounds like performance tuning and monitoring and security are the top three things. And can you set up this Drupal and SSL certs in order to get things online and get people up and running so they can add content to it? You may have some things that you may have to do that the customer can't do or the developer can't do because it's it's something that they want and they don't know how to do it. So that's what that is. But you're the web administrator. So you the question I would have is they said perform on a client's application hosting environment. So it looks like they're hosting it themselves. So again, I will find out what kind of hardware they're hosting on. All right. And that was our first one that we looked at. So I went through like five different job descriptions and I broke down exactly how I would ask questions. I broke down exactly what I'm looking at. And I also even went one step further and looked up the applications and then turn around and write down all your questions. If it's something you don't understand and you don't have a good grasp for it, keep digging until you can find out until you get a good grasp. Always look at white papers. Always go to YouTube and look up the products and see if they have a trial version you can install. You can get a free tier of Amazon if you don't have if you've already ran out. You can just use another email address and get another free tier and spin up some instances in Amazon to do it. The next thing I would do as well too is find out about the company. They may have other positions. That position may not be the one for you, but you may fit into another role. And then look online and try to see what else they got. But I will ask all the questions that I mentioned in here. Those are the questions that I will ask. So what's the recap? The recap is understand Ansible, understand Puppet. You can get into Chef and Salt, but Puppet and Ansible are the big ones. Python, Ruby, Bash, and Go. The next thing is understanding Kerbos and how they talk about it. I approach all jobs the same way. In terms of Docker and containers, looking at KVM and Docker and how they work in different environments, and those are all the things that really I've seen come across for most jobs. And those are things that you can readily get out and grab. So again, and then VMware, like everybody uses VMware, and I think I sent out last week the VMware link where you can go train and learn VMware for free. Um, they're talking about VLANs and trunks, networking with VLAN. Again, kickstart your machines, Cisco equipment, going and configuring that, some networking, understanding subnetting. Um, Red Hat stuff, Akron, Ohio. Again, Linux, no certifications required. Knowledge of Red Hat satellite server, understanding how to design, how to ramp up the team, lifecycle management, lifecycle deployment. Um, see, again, let's go here. AWS. Here it is. Puppet, Ansible, Chef. Understanding infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. Some type of cloud automation there. Uh, Understanding design. How to look at. You have to get in the process of looking at things from a 10,000 foot view, so you can understand what the entire infrastructure looks like, and then drill in, because if you don't look at things from a 10,000 foot view and you just tunnel vision on the one thing, you're never going to see the big picture and you're never going to understand the full thing. So always ask the questions from a 10,000 foot view and then drill in. All right. That was the web administrator. That's not it. Letters. Let's see. Splunk. That's another one. So Elasticsearch and Splunk. Splunk has a free university that you can go through, and so does MongoDB. Let me pull that up too. All right. So you sit back and you ask yourself, what would you do? Would I do Elasticsearch or would I do Splunk? Well, I would probably do both, actually. Splunk, they have a free university that you can walk through, free training that you can go through. Um, what have I seen for Splunk engineers in terms of salary? Um, Anywhere from 130 to 180, depending on your experience. It can go higher than that. So getting caught up on Splunk and threat detection on the security side of things is something you should always be looking at in every position. You should always be thinking about security. MongoDB University, there is a university and you can get certified on MongoDB as well too, and roll into a job if you want to. Here's their information, so you're more than welcome to study that for free and roll into it. Like if you want to do, if you and it breaks it down, if you want to be a DBA for it, or and you want to get into just being a developer, or just some general knowledge of what Splunk can do. So not Splunk, but what Mongo can do. Um, in terms of anything else that I've seen, oh here, let's go here. All right. So I get some of these sometimes, right? And I'm like, I don't know why you even sent me this, but okay, I'll look at it. So, experience as a voice over IP engineer, not my background. I understand it, but it's not my background. Again, I would break it down the exact same way that I did everything else. What does a VoIP engineer do? What does a VoIP engineer? What kind of hardware are they using? I'll go on YouTube to see if there's like a life in the day of a VoIP admin or engineer or an architect. I would look at see who's using voice over IP, what hardware is out there. I would literally go through and just break all that down and try to understand what that is. If I had that background, or even if I didn't, I would just look it up just to see, what it is. But that's how I break things down. So, any questions on any of that? I hope that made sense to everyone.
Tamika, I have a quick question. I noticed looking at some of the job description that Agile came up.
Yep.
What exactly do they mean by that?
So agile. Oh, Dion, you want to take agile as an answer? You want to answer that question? All right, here we go, right here.
I mean, you can go ahead and answer it as far as methodology. She's calling on me because I'm currently studying project management, and Agile is really based on iterations. It's becoming more pushed to the forefront due to
DevOps.
tech, DevOps and tech projects, and how fast those projects move and how fast they're completed, based on old methodologies such as waterfall. Even Scrum is kind of getting pushed to the back to Agile. When it comes to managing IT projects. So, in order to be on a team, you do need to know how the team works and how the project is managed. So, they are looking for at least a general understanding of the Agile methodology.
Yeah, and so with that being said, like I'm sure you do it, Lucy. Sprints at work, you guys do a deployment and you do it in iterations. So there are some companies like I think it's Netflix or maybe even Google that probably pushes code into production at least 100 times a day. And so you better make sure your stuff is right because you're pushing this into production. you know those type of things. So, and understanding the agile methodology, I posted that as well too. And then the other one is the ITIL. A lot of people prefer that as well too, so that you understand, again, life cycle management, continuous delivery, uh iteration, um, and doing deployments. So that's where all that comes into play, and those are things that you do just need to know or need to understand. No more questions. Nobody has nothing else. Was this? I'm gonna start recording.